didn't ever get into the holiday spirit, for as weird as that sounds, as much as I normally do, because Star Wars The Force Awakens was coming out. It could be simply because it was the first, the last first time this was going to happen, and I've talked about this at length. This was the first time there was going to be this big of a gap, right, between movies. And now that we're getting every year, maybe it'll calm down a little bit. But while I like having the idea of a Star Wars movie every Christmas, I really don't like the idea that, I wish I could spread the joy out a little bit more. Because it's going to be like a holiday season, I almost wish they had kept it in May, because then you can get out of Christmas and then the Star Wars season arrives and all these special things happen, whether it's the trailer you're waiting for, then going and buying toys, and then going to the movie again, and it's separated from Christmas, and Christmas is its own thing. I do like the idea of having Star Wars movies attached to Christmas. As a matter of fact, it's funny because I watch a lot of movies over the holidays that aren't traditional Christmas movies, but that take place during the holidays. So like the Die Hard movie. Die Hard takes place during Christmas time. Lethal Weapon takes place during Christmas time. You see what I'm saying? Iron Man 3 takes place during Christmas time. And it's funny, the guy that actually directed Iron Man 3, Shane Black, all of his movies take place during Christmas time. Iron Man 3, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is a great movie. I don't recommend films, but that movie is really a lot of fun. It's just a little edgy, a little bit of language. It's for adults. He also did, or wrote it. Did he? No, Richard Donner directed it, but he wrote it. Shane Black wrote Lethal Weapon, which took place during Christmas time. So I like the idea of having my Star Wars movies attached to Christmas, because whenever I watch The Force Awakens, I'll be thinking about Christmas, because I'll have that vibe to it. I just wish that, I wish I could have it spread out so that it wasn't overlapping with my Christmas season. It's first world problems. It's Star Wars problems. I'm just going to still have to get into the Christmas spirit while still enjoying my Star Wars. But from a movie standpoint of what they are going to do, I'm totally fine with them pushing it. Now, I'm going to jump ahead. I was going to save this for the end of the podcast, but I'll go ahead and do it here since we're talking about Episode 8. They've been talking about rewrites. Before we got news that Episode 8 was moving to December, there was some discussion that Christopher McQuarrie, who wrote and directed Mission Impossible 5 Rogue Nation, which was really good, wrote Usual Suspects, really good. He's come in to... I'm getting my stories crossed here. I'll go ahead and tell the story. He has come in to help with the writing on Rogue One. Okay, I'll double back to that because in my mind, I jumbled my writing stories. Okay, there are some script changes we're hearing to Episode 8. I don't believe them, though. I'll get to that in a second. But put a little pin in it. Christopher McQuarrie is doing rewrites for Rogue One. I'll get back to that when I talk about Rogue One, and we'll pin it. It's a pin in it now. Okay, out. It's a pin in it. Episode 8. There was some discussion before they moved the movie that there were going to be changes to the script because the studio, Disney, was surprised that the audience responded to the new characters as much as they did. And perhaps they needed to add in more scenes and needed to focus the story around Finn, Rey, and Poe more than they had anticipated prior. Now, also with this, there was some blog sites reporting, some movie sites were reporting, and I'm slowing down now because I don't want to get my stories mixed up again. There was some news sites reporting that Disney didn't put out as many Rey toys, nearly as many as Kylo Ren, because they were focusing on Kylo Ren. But it turns out that everybody was so taken by Rey that there was a desire for more Rey toys, and now there are fewer Kylo. They are inundated with a ton of Kylo Ren stuff and not enough Rey stuff. Okay, I call a whole bunch of hooey on that. I don't want to curse on my podcast. I call just a whole bunch of shenanigans on that. One, there's not a lot of Kylo Ren stuff left out there. Trust me, I go to the stores all the time. I always go to the toy section. You can't find it's almost impossible to find any 3 3/4 action figures. Let alone, I couldn't tell you the last time I saw a 3 3/4 Kylo Ren action figure, or even a Black Series 6-inch Kylo Ren action figure, or Rey for that matter. I do agree they didn't put out very many Rey toys, and they're doing it now, but I don't agree with this. They overmarketed or produced too many Kylo Ren stuff. The things that they made too many of were the taller action figures, those Mondo 3, 4 foot, and 5, 6 foot ones. They had the doll ones they put out, and I'm no toy marketing genius, but I still see there being a bigger demand for the 3 3/4 action figures than the tall doll ones, just because they're too, for me, especially if they're targeting them towards boys, they're just too much like the Barbie dolls and the old tall G.I. Joes. Smaller is better in my opinion. And I also think part of the problem is too, when it comes to the toys like Rey, that's a difficult one to pull back off. I mean, I have the Black Series Rey action figure, the 6-inch one, and just in terms of stylistically speaking, you can get away with having a male character or obviously an alien not look quite like the actor did. But when you're working with a female character and somebody as stunning as Rey is, if she looks weird or different, then it doesn't look right. Like, you're not as accepting of Rey looking different. You want it to look more spot on. Hot Toys is making a great Rey action figure. So I don't buy this idea they screwed up on the toys. And I also, to a certain extent, don't buy this idea that they're doing script rewrites simply because they want to include the new characters more and they didn't think the audience was going to react the way that they did. I don't buy that. Being a talk show host, I can listen back to my show and I can tell you that was a good show. I got to imagine guys all the people surrounding the movie, J.J. Abrams, Lawrence Kasdan, Kathleen Kennedy, on down the line of everybody that worked on the film. You mean to tell me that they all watched that film, how many times they watched it, how many times they cut those scenes together, how many times they watched different cuts of it, and none of them could have come to the conclusion that they really struck gold with these characters and people were going to bond with them? I just don't buy that. I don't buy that they would have needed for the movie to come out to see people gravitate towards them. Maybe if they're not talking about Rey, but there's no way, in my opinion, that you could have worked on the film and seen all the footage they shot of Rey and sat back and goes, well, I wonder if everyone's going to really connect with Rey. Of course you are. She was great. Maybe Finn and Poe. I'll give you that. Maybe they didn't think that people were going to gravitate towards Poe the way that they did. Maybe they didn't think people were going to like Finn as much as they did. By the way, side note, I predicted after I saw the movie, or right before the movie came out, when we started to get a little bit more of Finn in the trailers, that the Finn action figures that has still been sort of warming the pegs at the stores prior to the movie coming out would all be gone. I was absolutely right. When I go to the store now, I saw tons of 3 3/4 action figures and tons of the Black Series Finns. I can't find any of them now since the movie came out. I don't doubt that they wanted to do some rewrites, and maybe they wanted to tweak it a little bit. I think this push gives them the opportunity to gives Rian Johnson, who's writing and directing it, the opportunity to flesh this out a little bit, take a little bit more time and not rush it. And again, marketing-wise, and apart from it happening at Christmas, from a fan standpoint, I do like the fact that there's some distance now. And that's plenty of time. I mean, when I think about the year ahead of me, apart from all the nonsense that I have to deal with in terms of just, real life and stuff, when I think the year I have ahead of me, it's pretty cool, man. I got NASCAR starting soon. I'm a huge NASCAR fan. We'll get to the Super Bowl and playoff weekends. This is when I pay attention to football. And then, coming up in April, we've got the Force Awakens, DVD and Blu-rays coming out, so I get to look forward to that. Hopefully there'll be a new batch of toys coming out, and they'll finally release a Hasbro 3 3/4 scale version of his command shuttle, because it is a crime that Hasbro has not made that into a large toy yet. That and the First Order transport, that submarine-looking thing, I want a big one of those too, because I'm a child. That's why. But when you think about the fact that you've got, the movie coming out, and then we're going to be into Rogue One. We should have a trailer by then, and then heading into the hype leading up to Rogue One. Let's talk a little bit about Rogue One, shall we? Rogue One is a tough one to discuss right now because we just don't know anything about. We know the story. We talked about that last week. But we don't know what they're going to do in terms of aesthetic, how it's going to feel. There's been some reports coming out of scene descriptions. We've seen some photos of the X-Wing fighters. We know that Darth Vader is going to be in it. We know that James Earl Jones is coming back to voice Darth Vader. We know that the team that they put together to recreate Darth Vader's suit, it has apparently done a faithful recreation of the A New Hope Vader, which is going to be awesome. I don't think they'll overuse Vader in the movie, and I don't think they should. You still have to have that moment when Vader enters the Tantive 4. I always get it wrong. Oh, I'm such a horrible Star Wars fan. That opening shot when you first see Vader in A New Hope, that still has to have impact. So having a movie that happens right before A New Hope, you've got to match that pretty well. But you also don't want to overdo it and give you a Vader that doesn't match A New Hope. The Darth Vader in A New Hope is much different than the Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I mean, the Darth Vader in A New Hope is fairly subdued. He doesn't have a ton of scenes in the movie. And then the lightsaber fight at the end, just because of the technology and choreography at the time, was pretty subdued and tame. So you can't have, sort of crazy, Anakin Skywalker style Darth Vader with a bunch of enthusiasm and just going nuts in Rogue One, because it's just not going to match with the tone of A New Hope. And I don't think Disney would ever want to ruin that. And I'll talk a little bit about Kylo Ren and get back to, hopefully I remember, because there's a correlation between Kylo Ren and Darth Vader that I want to talk about too as part of today's podcast. So hopefully they simply use Darth Vader in Rogue One, in a very I don't want to say small, but a very focused part of the story about those Death Star plans being stolen. And they really sort of capture that sort of subdued but menacing vibe. It wasn't until you got to The Empire Strikes Back where you had Darth Vader that was just taking out everybody that looked at him wrong, that poured him a wrong cup of coffee. He has to use it in a tube because he can't with the helmet. It doesn't work. Anyways. But the other thing is, it's tough to know because this is how to get kind of hyped yet for this movie, because we haven't really seen any artwork apart from the photos. We've seen a couple of the concept art, but that's not really giving you a vibe. We know that they're going for a war feel and a wartime feel. They got Zero Dark 30 cinematographer and the people that worked on Saving Private Ryan, and so it's tough as a Star Wars fan to sort of translate that into what that would be for a Star Wars movie, because we really haven't seen anything like it. You can't really count the Geonosis battle. Battle on Endor doesn't really quite feel that way. And so it has the potential to be really cool, but until we see some footage, it's really tough to go and get really hyped until we see something. So I'm just now getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I want to see some stuff from this movie. I want to know what vibe they're going for. I went back and watched Godzilla last weekend. And that, of course, is the newest one. But Gareth Edwards, who is directing Rogue One, did Godzilla. And I went back and watched Godzilla. I may have mentioned this last week, actually. Anyway, I went and watched Godzilla this weekend just because I wanted to kind of get a vibe off of Gareth Edwards' style. And I was going, okay, I can see this. Sort of transferring in my mind, moving people running around in certain situations and military and sort of, squinting my eyes and looking at it from a Star Wars perspective. I'm like, okay, I could absolutely see how this would work. But, Rogue One's got a really tough road ahead of it because, after The Force Awakens, they have to differentiate that it's not the sequel to The Force Awakens. And I think that'll be pretty clear to the audience that isn't paying attention out of the gate when they go and they market it. I'm excited to see how they plan on going about doing that. I'm excited to see how they plan on marketing Rogue One to differentiate it. You are probably going to see a lot of Darth Vader, even though he may not be a lot in it a lot. I also hope they learn from their mistakes, if there were mistakes, when it comes to The Force Awakens as it relates to Rey, depending on how the Felicity Jones character, the lead character in it, is. I'm excited to see it. I mean, that's an understatement. I'm excited to see another female lead. Let me jump off this just for a moment. Let me